millions of Americans are on high alert across the Gulf Coast. Right now, 2 tropical storms are threatening to make landfall there in the coming days. CBS News meteorologist and climate specialist Jeff Berardelli joins us now. So, Jeff, what is the latest on those 2 tropical systems you've been watching?
Yeah, for the past couple of days, they've been limping along. They haven't been able to get their act together. But then all of a sudden last night, bang, the showers and thunderstorms started firing up near both of the systems, and they are both intensifying as we speak. The one to the east, that is Tropical Storm Laura. Laura has winds right around 50 miles an hour or so. You can see a big blossoming of thunderstorms. Still trying to get itself organized. It's located to the south of Puerto Rico right now, and it's moving towards the west. It'll likely move over the islands. That will disrupt its circulation a little bit, probably prohibiting it from becoming a very strong storm, at least in the short term. Longer term, that's a different story. That right there is Tropical Storm Marco. Winds are close to 65 miles an hour. So, another 10 miles an hour, it's a hurricane. And there's plenty of warm water. Where you see the red, those are water temperatures 85 to 90 degrees. So it's a lot of high-octane fuel for both of these systems. This is where it's headed. Both of them moving to the west-northwest or the northwest, depending upon which system you're talking about. Tropical Storm Laura, again, moving right over the spine of the mountains here in both Haiti and the Dominican Republic and also into Cuba. So it probably will stay a tropical storm until it gets to the Gulf of Mexico. In the meantime, Marco is likely going to be intensifying to a Category 1 hurricane. However, eventually it will run into wind shear right about there and probably start to weaken back to a tropical storm before making landfall on Tuesday, probably along the Texas coast. Look at this. I'm not sure I've ever seen this before. 2 systems kind of crossing. Now, it's a little misleading because Marco is about a day ahead. Marco is about a day ahead of Laura. However, there's going to be landfalls within a couple of hundred miles of each other, within 24 hours of each other. And actually, we're concerned about Laura because Laura is going to have at least 2 days over extraordinarily warm waters in the eastern Gulf. So it's very likely it's going to intensify to a hurricane. It may even intensify to a strong hurricane as it moves over the water. Now, by the way, Lana, this is a question a lot of people are wondering. Could we possibly have a super cane? Could these 2 merge being right next to each other? Even though it's 2020, the answer is no. It would defy the laws of physics because the way it works is both storms have rising motion in their centers but sinking motion on the edges. And so what usually happens is the bigger storm will suppress the smaller storm and begin to weaken the smaller storm, as you can see right there. So it would be likely that probably, I'd say Marco will end up weakening at the expense of Laura, which will end up strengthening. So once again, the good thing is, even though it's 2020, we cannot get a super cane in the Gulf of Mexico. And if it were to happen, then we'd be in real trouble.
Jeff, you said super cane and my head exploded. I was like, no, murder hornets, super canes, global pandemics.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear at least a super pandemic is not happening. But that was such an interesting graphic that you showed with the two paths. How unusual is it to have 2 systems so close to one another in the Gulf like that, just days apart?
So we have once or twice seen 2 systems in the Gulf of Mexico. We've never seen 2 hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time. And so this would be historic, but not for 2020 because we are on a record pace. We're about a week and a half ahead of a record pace, meaning that we already are on the 14th named storm, the earliest that has happened before September 2nd. So for any other year, this would be extraordinarily unusual, but considering this is 2020 and a lot of unusual things have been happening, I would say this is par for the course.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the fires that are burning in the western United States. Firefighters are battling nearly 24 major wildfires across the state of California. How will the weather factor into those efforts this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's important to mention before we talk about the weather how unprecedented this is. This is not another, sensational news headline. We've never seen this before. That's how fast things are lighting on fire and burning acres across California. Let me give you some perspective on this. It's quite amazing what's happening right now, and I'm not exaggerating at all. So far, about 900,000 acres have burned across the state in 1 week. The normal for an entire season is 700,000 acres. So we're already past that in 1 week. This is just the beginning of fire season. 2 of those fires, the LNU and the SCU complex fires, both started by lightning, are the number 2 and number 4 largest fires in California history, all within a week. And pretty soon it'll probably take over #1. And then lastly, most of the fire season is still ahead. September and October is the peak of hurricane season. We're going to be at the peak then, but we still have several months to go. I mean, really, hurricane season doesn't start to wane usually until November, so it's going to be a long and really tough fire season in California. All right, so this is kind of the weather pattern that we're going to be looking at. Big dome of high pressure, so again, there's a heat wave going on. The only good news is that the dome of high pressure is going to be centered further east, so it's not going to be quite as hot over California, but this is a big problem. Notice that southerly wind flow right there. That's moisture, which I'm going to show you more of in a second or two. Temperatures, they aren't 110 in Fresno and Bakersfield. They're closer to 100 degrees, so it's an improvement from several days ago, but it's hot all across the West. There are fires ongoing in Colorado as well. And there's a drought all across the West right now. We've been in a drought basically on and off since the year 2000. This is one of the worst droughts the West has seen in 1,200 years. There's been research on that. Look at all that smoke that's trapped in the valleys right now. I mean, really thick smoke. It's bad for your short-term and long-term health, and it's spreading across the country. Most of it's trapped in the West, but some of it will make for hazy skies in the East. So when you look up at the sky today at sunset, you may see a colorful sunset. Believe it or not, that's smoke from the fires in California. And I want to show you this one thing. This is bad news. This was Tropical Storm Genevieve. That moisture is breaking off and it's moving northward and it's infusing moisture into the atmosphere tomorrow and Monday. That means a chance for scattered lightning storms, and that means we could see a reignition of some more fires across the state of California.
And Jeff, no chance that moisture system as it's moving up might bring some relief to the firefighting efforts in California?
No, it's unlikely because usually when the moisture comes in, it's just enough moisture to spark the thunderstorms. They're usually dry thunderstorms. They don't produce much rain. And if it was, it wouldn't be enough to help. It always has a counter effect, almost always, which is the lightning produces more fires than the rain could ever help with. One of the problems, Alana, that we have across the West is that it's warming rapidly across the West. In fact, that's the trend of warming is fastest in the West of anywhere else in the country. It's actually cooling here in the upper Midwest, northern plain states because of irrigation, because of human irrigation. So it kind of cools the atmosphere. But because of the warming in the West, it's evaporating the moisture in the atmosphere and on the ground, making it more tender, more crisp. And so these fires can spread more readily. They get out of control more easily. So you notice that trend in the temperature right there in white, and also the trend in the size of fires, bigger and bigger each and every year as a result of climate change. And so because of that, just over the past 4 or 5 decades, we've seen a transformation in fire season in the West. It is now 2 to 3 months longer than it used to be. Since 1972, California burned area has increased by 5 times. Think about that, 5 times the burned area in just the past few decades in one generation. And 15 of the 20 largest wildfires have burned since 2000. But I'll tell you, I'm probably going to have to increase that to 17 because, again, I just told you that the 2 fires that are burning right now are actually number 2 and number 4. So you can see the consequences of a lot of things, right? People living in places where they didn't live before, more exposure, more vulnerability, and then we load the dice with warmer and a drier climate because of human-caused climate change, and this is the result, unprecedented results, actually.
It's really stunning. Our hearts go out to everybody who is dealing with all that we're dealing with right now and then have these weather conditions and fire conditions on top of it. Jeff Berardelli, thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.